Ladies and gentlemen, the plot thickens pertaining to the different strains of this virus and also what possibly caused this to escape a lab, whether or not it was manipulated. I have a Live Science article that says there was a study done where they found that it wasn't manipulated and it wasn't constructed in a lab, because you can't, like many of my viewers have told me last segment, you cannot create a virus, but you can manipulate it. So there was a Live Science article that said, well, it wasn't even manipulated. However, scientists say they've identified 2 strains of COVID-19. This is ABC News. So this is a couple weeks back, but one strain was common in Wuhan, China, then dropped off significantly. Scientists from China said they've identified 2 strains of COVID-19 linked to the recent outbreak. Coronavirus are a large family of RNA viruses, and when RNA viruses replicate quickly, they often mutate. Researchers analyzed 103 sequenced genomes using strains from China and found that 70% of the strains were one type, which they call L. The L strain was more aggressive than the remaining 30% of strains, which they dubbed S. So the L strains are 70%, and they're more aggressive than the S strains, which are 30%. The first strain was more common at the beginning of the outbreak in Wuhan, China, but its frequency decreased after early January. That drop-off could be a result of the strict measures China put in place to try and stem the spread of the virus. Now, again, the information you get from the government of China is different. It might not back up the claim that, well, there were 2 strains, and the first strain was located within Wuhan, and then the second strain, we don't know where that came from. The logical assumption is that there are 2 strains, or maybe more than 2 strains. There could be more than 2 strains. I don't know how plausible it is that they're telling the entire truth, because this is an ABC News article. I'll read you a Bloomberg article saying that they hid numbers and they were not forthright with all the information. But here, the new paper published Tuesday in the National Science Review from the Chinese Academy of Sciences is preliminary, the paper's authors cautioned. The scientists only analyzed strains from China, so more information is needed about strains from other countries to determine whether the same viruses have spread worldwide. We don't even know if it's the same. We don't even know if we have the same virus as they did initially in Wuhan, China. And then there's another strain within China. That's 30% of the cases, which is less severe. Dr. Stanley Perlman, a professor of microbiology and immunology at the University of Iowa, who has researched SARS and MERS, said that the new paper didn't prove that one strain was more aggressive or faster spreading than the other. Okay, quote, for now it looks like there are 2 strains, but we do not know exactly what this means. Okay, well, there you go. So there are 2 strains. There were 2 strains, at least in China. Now, China concealed extent of outbreak, U.S. intelligence says. So, again, I don't know who to believe, because I don't believe U.S. intelligence, and I don't believe the government of China. So, I put both of those in the same basket, if you ask me. So, H.A. Goodman does not believe U.S. intelligence or the government of China. Okay, there's not one side that is telling the truth and one side there's not one side that has a monopoly on the truth, because we know what U.S. intelligence has done to our own president, to a president-elect, to everyone around him, setting up and framing President Trump with a dossier purchased by Clinton that we now find out was riddled with Russian disinformation. So they were willing participants in Russian disinformation, the U.S. intelligence community was. Their goal, or their what they're there to do, their mission statement, okay, is their raison d'être is to actually find out what China is doing. So in that case, okay, that's their goal. We need to find out what other countries are doing. That's why you have an intelligence agency. You don't have intelligence agents or agencies or chiefs to look within the country. Or at least you shouldn't focus on that. But China concealed extent of virus outbreak, U.S. intelligence says. Report submitted to White House on China under count. U.S. has publicly reported more than twice as many cases. China has concealed the extent of the coronavirus outbreak in its country, underreporting both total cases and lives lost. The U.S. intelligence community concluded in a classified report to the White House, according to 3 officials. Okay, so then you have according to 3 officials, and same thing. I'd be willing to say that a communist government known to do very, very bizarre and unethical and immoral things, even more so than our government, I'd be willing to say that they're almost certainly lying pertaining to the extent of the suffering. There's also a Japan Times article that talks about, let's see, Japan Times, Wuhan virus patient numbers manipulated for Xi Jinping's visit. Doctor says the number of novel patients in Wuhan, the epicenter of China's virus outbreak, was manipulated in time for President Xi Jinping's earlier visit this month, a local doctor told Kyoto News. Okay, so here's my take on this. Then you have the WHO, who made a number of missteps as well. Then you had Andrew Cuomo, who basically wrote there's no reason for undue anxiety. The general risk remains low in New York. Then you had Eric Swalwell saying, stop wearing masks. Okay. Then you had President Trump being impeached just a week before this, or weeks before this, and the Democratic governors focused only on things like solar energy and climate change. Their State of the State addresses mentioned nothing about this outbreak. We don't know how many strains there are in the world. We don't know the number of different strains. We don't know... A, we don't know the number of different strains. B, we don't know if one strain is necessarily less severe than the other or more severe than the other. Okay? 2, each city, each state, each province, each region within a given country will be affected differently from perhaps different strains. New York might not have just the same strain, might have different strains, or might have a more potent strain than the rest of the country. I can't just say that it's because people live in such close proximity in New York, because whereas you have, Michigan and Illinois, and other cities where people live in close proximity to one another, they're not experiencing the same. They're experiencing suffering, but not the same lives lost. New York leads the country by close to over 100,000 cases, and New York itself has more lives lost and cases than countries around the world. So you don't tank. This is just my take on this. You could have simply told people around the United States of America, all 320 million of us, to take precautions. If you're vulnerable, you stay home. You could have simply said, okay, practice social distancing, not go and vote. Can you imagine how disingenuous and duplicitous these people are, Democrats? They're like, well, they risk their lives for democracy. No, it's not democracy. You just didn't want Wisconsin to be an issue during the November election. So you got one more conservative state Supreme Court judge, still dominated by conservatives still. And you risk the lives of people by not canceling the primary. The Democrats are very funny. They're like, oh my God, you have to practice social distancing. If not, everyone suffers. Then they have 4 primaries where over 4 million people vote. Well over 4 million people in Florida, Illinois, Arizona, and then Wisconsin in the rain. In the rain. Some people voted in the rain getting pelted by hail. There are pictures in the New York Times of people with face masks drenched in the rain. Okay, then we get the lectures from the wonderful liberal medical police. Oh, you have to social distance, you have to do this, you have to do that, and if you don't do this, it's going to hurt the whole country, and da-da-da-da. Yeah, okay, great. Why didn't you cancel your primaries? Well, we can't open up the economy. It's not safe. But why didn't you cancel your primaries? So opening up the economy is not opening up the economy of states, letting people back to work is not as important as your primaries. Is that how it works? Well, it's our right to vote. The Democratic primaries, that is not democracy. Maybe a presidential election, I could understand why people would perhaps risk their lives. But a Democratic primary, when you already knew Bernie had no chance because he was cheated in 2016, not only because he had no chance this year, his campaign became a media creation, run into the ground by the same people that he couldn't even endorse. But Democrats say, well, we can't open up the economy. Well, why on earth didn't they cancel their primaries? Because they wanted to knock Bernie Sanders out completely and then go with the charade of Biden. So you have a situation, and then Hillary Clinton's going to be nominee. What did I wait 12 minutes into this? That's pretty good if I did. 100% Hillary Clinton's going to be nominee. Even in the first round, they're not pledged to vote. They're not legally bound to vote for Biden. So then the superdelegates come in. Who do you think's who? Okay, whether or not he has serious cognitive decline or not, that's irrelevant. What I said is happening. People are clamoring for an alternative. What did I say to everyone? I said that people will be clamoring for an alternative, and one way or another, they're going to usher in Hillary Clinton. She's going to be nominee, and I give her a 20% chance. 20% chance. Or even a 25% chance. Or possibly a tiny bit more of defeating President Trump. You cannot take it lightly. And the only way to defeat Clinton is to vote. Tell everyone that you know to vote for President Trump. And I think that, look, I don't believe that Clinton will win. I think it's possible, though. Let's put it this way. If Biden becomes nominee, people say, oh, I'll never let you live it down. Believe me, deep inside, I want Biden to become nominee, and I want to be wrong. Believe me. If Biden becomes nominee, then he doesn't even win the popular vote. President Trump there's zero chance Democrats win. Zero. You know how I'm kind of worried that Clinton could possibly become president? And if she doesn't, she'll run again in 2024. But I'm not worried at all about Biden. Biden has zero chance. Okay, the debates between Biden and Trump would be comedy gold. But there are two strains. There are two strains or more strains. The entire country is not New York. So why would you, I just don't understand. You get told to shut down the entire economy. What if this happens again? Are you going to shut down the economy again and then have a $6 trillion response in terms of a bailout? You can't afford that as a country. Just go bankrupt. Countries can go bankrupt, The left doesn't seem to understand that at all. That's not, I'm not Rand Paul when it comes to that. Even though I wrote an article about Rand Paul compared to Clinton, his foreign policy is infinitely better. But see, they don't care about foreign policy on the left. But you can't always just pump trillions of dollars every 3, 4, 5 years. when this type of thing comes out. You have to address this. We address this in a counterproductive manner, because you could have told people to stay home who were most vulnerable, which they are, and people who are not vulnerable are going to the gas station, are going to the supermarket. People are still going out, people, ladies and gentlemen, and you know this. Society has not shut down. We still have to go to, and people still work at the grocery stores. And say, well, the essential businesses. Okay, well, they're not dropping like flies at the grocery store. People are practicing social distancing and wearing masks. Some are wearing, this is hilarious. Some are wearing welders. These like they look like welders masks, which is I saw one woman with a welder's mask at the supermarket. It's pretty awesome. I was like, with my mask, I was like, they're not welders masks. They're like these plastic visors. I'm like no microbe's gonna get you today. I'll tell you that. But you didn't have to tank the economy and cause a mini depression or a mini recession. You didn't. And Democrats, that they did this. They pushed for this, and they're dragging their feet on opening up the economy, because when it comes to politics, they're like, well, we have to do it. It's for democracy. It's like, no. The DNC lawyers during the DNC fraud lawsuit stated that it's a private entity. They could pick their nominee in smoke-filled back rooms. They do not have to have primaries, and they do not have to vote for people who win in primaries. I hope people understand this concept. I don't think they do. And then the other thing is, well, the Democratic voters would not stand for this. Yeah, they'll stand for anything. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. We should not have tanked the entire economy, because we don't even have all the information. We never had all the information, and the WHO didn't really help us get all the information we need. We should never have given the keys to the economy to people who lacked total information, and to people who don't understand that the entire country is not New York. There are going to be certain regions, there are going to be certain places, certain states, certain cities that must deal with this in a different way than rural regions or states that are more spread out. California is far more spread out than New York. They say, well, it worked. We're doing a lot better because of the shutdown of the economy. No, it's not. No, that's not the reason. The economy is not completely shut down. It is, but you still have supermarkets. You still have gas stations. You can still go to the hospital. You can still. There are people working still. The reason California did better is because its geography and the way its cities are planned, and it's just far more spread out. We live in a more expansive place in California than in New York, and especially in New York City. That's why you could have had almost the same numbers. And if you want to say, well, lives, then ban alcohol. How many lives would be saved if you banned alcohol tomorrow? Have the 18th Amendment again. But you could have had the same outcome by simply allowing the economy. And if private industries wanted to do their thing, like baseball and basketball, if they wanted to cancel their seasons, that's on them. But you don't tank the entire economy. You could have worn masks, worn gloves, social distancing and all that, but allowed people to go to businesses, work, factories, offices. Anyway, give me your thoughts below. We don't have all the information, and we don't even know how many strains there are. Give me your thoughts below. And the Chinese government almost certainly did not give all the information.